Welcome back to the Cyber Executive, the podcast where we mix technology, risk, and leadership like a cocktail you didn't know you needed, but now you can't live without. I am your host, Marc Ashworth, and today I have an old friend with me here today. She is the Vice President of Technology at Elevate. Please welcome Teri Green Manson. Teri.
Hey, how are you guys doing?
I'm doing good. Um, so before we get rolling, do me a quick favor, tap that following button on your favorite podcast app and share the Cyber Executive with your friends and coworkers and that one person in IT who sighs loudly every time someone clicks a suspicious link. Let's spread the cyber love. So let's get started here. So Teri, you've been doing some amazing things out there and you developed your own framework called TEST for AI security reviews and training and that sort of thing. So what problem were you seeing in an organizations that made this necessary?
That's a great question, Mark. The truth of the matter is, I kept seeing the gap between AI excitement and a security reality. Nobody was talking about the associated risks. You had companies either moving so fast where they ignored the risks, or they were moving so slow that they become obsolete. So, where they were at a stagnation and freeze. I thought about how could we actually make transactional movement without being so vulnerable to without governance to the risk.
Great. And so before we break it down, what does TEST stand for and why did you choose, these letters and everything as the foundation for your program?
Well, touch, execute, store, and trust. And it's mainly because majority of the AI risks that I was seeing or breaches, it all kind of mapped back to these same four principles, and trust being ultimately one of the biggest components, which is why we started saying things like zero trust. Where it mapped back down to confidentiality, the way we execute things, how we store things, why we always talking about disaster recovery and business continuity. So to be able to kind of make sure I stayed in the same context of what we have learned in the cybersecurity element, I just kept it simple.
Great. So, one of the things that I think is very overwhelming right now for a lot of security leaders is around AI and risk. So, how does TEST simplify AI security without oversimplifying it?
It actually kind of like removes the noise without removing the nuance, if that makes any sense.
Okay.
Right. So like you don't need to understand every model of the architecture to be able to kind of use tests. You just have to be able to ask some solidifying questions to be able to get to a foundational reality so you can move forward. I think a lot of times in cybersecurity or technology in general, we want it all the new shiny tools, yet we're not asking the real questions about how this tool is actually going to hinder our organizations versus help it, right? Which is, if you think about one of the latest breaches that happened using AI, that no one thought about how it could execute without approval. So we got to keep the humans involved.
So, if we, kind of breaking that down with touch, what should organizations be asking about the data that they're interacting with?
Hmm. I think it's one simple question: what data can this AI see? Right? Um, is it intentional or accidental? Right? And then from there, you can be able to kind of you map that down based on what if can actually see this particular data. Can it touch it? It can see it. Can it touch it? Right? And then that will move into the execution phase. Can it actually execute it accidentally or intentionally? And then you kind of move from there.
Right. So, what sort of common mistakes, and I know there's a ton of possibilities there that,
Yeah.
teams see and everything, but what are things you're seeing that teams are making around data exposure when integrating with AI tools?
They assume that AI tools behave in a certain traditional software, and they do not. Right? They're not thinking. A lot of, to be honest, it's sad to say, but a lot of people don't even have labeling within their organization to be able to kind of decipher what is sensitive data um, and what not. But yet they're putting AI tools within their environment, making themselves a little bit more vulnerable than they should be. Um, Teams pay sensitive data inside of things like Chat GPT all the time, right? And we're not supposed to be able to gather that information. But if you ask Chat GPT the right questions, you can get particular information that you're not supposed to have. I've done it. I've actually was able to get a whole infrastructure layout for a former organization from Chat GPT because somebody actually uploaded the schematic.
Yeah. And when it comes to security teams and that touch pillar, Should they be identifying risk using sensitive data leakage or unintended data reuse early when it comes to that touch pillar?
Touch force is used to kind of um, I'm trying to think about the most simplest way to say this. But touch teaches you to trace the data before something actually goes wrong to be able to kind of put a more proactive stance on it, right? So if we start asking all of those questions in rejection, is this regulated data? Is this sensitive data? Can it be seen accidentally or intentionally, and then kind of move from there and help us map things in a different way before we actually put these tools in our environment, so we can actually really have pinpoint the associated risk.
Right. So moving to execute, why is the understanding that an AI system can actually do often more important than what it was designed to do?
Think about it. AI doesn't live in isolation, right? So the truth of the matter is, once it's connected to workflows, APIs, or software, it can do more than anyone can ever imagine or intended for it to actually do, right? It's actually learning the behaviorisms within your organization to be able to kind of tell you what is anomaly or not. But no one is looking at AI as maybe it's the anomaly, right? So who's protecting the protector, right? So risk lives in capability, and AI is that big aha moment, right? But like I stated earlier, in cybersecurity, either you're gonna move too fast, where the risk is going to be there, or you're gonna move too slow and you're gonna be obsolete.
Yeah, and when it comes to, risk and assessing risk, there's always, there's different methods to do that and different
Yeah.
ways to kind of help organize that and detect that. So with test, how can that help organizations assess risk around agentic behavior, automation, or AI just taking action on behalf of users? So how can that kind of tie in and help versus maybe what some of the other frameworks might be doing?
You know what? Execution asks is these questions right here. Can it trigger? Can it trigger my actions? Right? Make changes. Decide without human approval. Right? And if AI can act without human approval, that means it has controls, visibility, and accountability, right? So we as the organization, we have to be able to kind of look at this differently. And we have to make sure that we have a human in the loop of the approval process, so that AI does not make those decisions for us, right? We can't, and I think a lot of people are using it in a method where I can put this automation in place and AI can just run haywire through my infrastructure, and now they're putting themselves at a loss when they should not extract the human from the approval loop. And that's what execution, it actually, by us asking those mundane questions, it actually tell us where we need the human inside of the loop.
Yeah, and I think with that, there's a lot when it comes around execution and automation and allowing AI to do that detection and then automate some sort of workflow. So
Yeah.
how how or what sort of guardrails should be in place when AI systems are allowed to trigger workflows and make changes and interact with other systems, and what about the change management component of that to the follow through, the documentation component of it?
You know what? When I think about this, I would say, um, a lot of times when people say guardrails, we're always talking about filters, and this is beyond filters. It's just a layer of a guardrail. So the human in approval is one of the parts, right? A lot of humans think their jobs are being taken over by AI. No, we need a human there. That is part of one of the guardrails. Making sure that we have a clear understanding from our labels and our categories of what data is sensitive and what data is classified, right, or regulated, right, and being able to put those in certain pockets, and how we actually put those protective controls in place. I think we do have to put security controls around AI differently, right? I think AI should only have read only access, not read execute. I don't think any software, to be honest, inside my infrastructure can't execute a thing, right? Because if it does and it changes and I'm unaware, I feel like I'm the one that's liable.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's where automated workflows get tricky because you want, especially in a security event, time is of essence. And so if AI is detecting that and it's triggering a workflow, um, there's how is there human notification for that? Is that triggering a email? Is it triggering an alert? But then is that alert being detected and by the SOC? Do you have it trigger a automated change control that's then assigned to maybe the person on call? To where then there's that notification that maybe during the cab process. So there's lots of different ways I think to
Yeah,
handle that, especially in the larger enterprises. And I know it just in banking and I'm sure in healthcare and some other larger, you have change control meetings and those sorts of things and the importance of documenting any sort of changes that goes on. And so to have that tie into that or trigger that automated, then you're also saving then time for the individuals to not have to put in those change controls. So,
absolutely true. But the one thing we all know, Mark, is not every organization is built the same. Some
mhm,
organizations have very high governance standards, and some do not. Right.
right.
Especially if you think about the mom and pop shops. Right. So like, I think, but no, now nonetheless, they all associate with the same risk. So that's the one thing I love about tests. It can go into any infrastructure. You're just basically kind of putting it with your same process, and you're just asking these particular questions associated within your process when you're assessing criteria for applications to come within, if organizations are doing that. And a lot of organizations are not, right? Some of them are trying to figure it out right now when they got 50,000 things inside of the infrastructure, instead of, because they didn't do it from the beginning. And I think if you do it from the beginning, it can be a little bit more you can be a little bit more aggressive and govern data differently. But of course, you can catch up. It's just going to take you a different stance on the way you kind of use tests, and you make sure you use it in I would say your most sensitive spots first. But you have to make sure you can answer the questions related to tests and those four pillars before you start it.
Yeah, and that's great because small enterprises, you may have one person, so you can't have the big burden. Whereas something like a NIST CSF or ISO or something like that is too much for a small company to try to, base a framework on. So it does have to be simple and then easy to roll out both at a large scale or a small scale. So that's great.
This is why all organizations, believe me, should start with touch, right? Because they should start with touch, because the AI risk actually lives there first,
Mhm.
right? What data can it see? What data can it touch? Right? Is it accidental? Is it intentional? Like, and be able to answer those questions. A lot of people just haven't been doing the leg work.
Yeah. So when it comes to store now, what questions should security leaders be asking about how AI systems retain data, context, or memory? I mean, that's something that should be part of the due diligence anyway before you're bringing on a enterprise solution. But how can this help it out?
Yeah. I, ask You can ask two simple questions. Does it save my memory? And if so, for how long? So even if you use ChatGPT, you can actually tell it to remember the data, right? But how many people know how long the retention period is if they haven't done the work to it, right? So where is this memory stored? You don't know where this data is going. And I think being able to be a little bit more intentional and figure out those pieces, I think we can get somewhere a little bit quicker. But those are the first questions you should ask about any software you bring into your infrastructure.
Yeah, definitely. And that should be part of that third party vendor due diligence program. And you can easily incorporate that into there to where those earlier stages it's in there and have an AI related due diligence that's happening as part of that. So, assuming that you don't have shadow AI taking place and you don't know about it in the first place,
Yeah.
because that never happens, right? So,
It's, I think our biggest downfall is most people think about, when we start thinking about storage, they think about it like databases. When AI actually remember things like context and patterns, is
mhm.
is is bigger than databases, right? And I think if we take ourselves outside of the box, we'll be able to see it clearer.
Yeah. Yeah, and that you just kinda hit on, that around how it's being stored and where it's being stored, so,
Yeah.
there's a lot of, I think, underestimation off of there, so it really becomes training that for your users on what that means and how it's doing that. So how would you recommend, security teams, do that outreach to better train, the users on how to use AI?
I think we have to reframe from thinking about ongoing risks. We have to reframe thinking the way we think about ongoing risks. And it's not a one stop shop. I think, of course, we always say cybersecurity awareness and all these different tool sets. But the truth of the matter is, we have to be able to kind of go within our organizations. Everybody's talking about AI policies. AI is moving quicker than we can get the policy approved, right? AI has
Mhm.
outpaced governments. So the truth of the matter is, we have to be able to allow what we're going to allow within the organization, do our due diligence around the two sets, and then train them how to use it efficiently. I don't care if you do quarterly trainings within your organization. I think teaching them how to protect themselves in return will protect your organization.
Yeah. And how does TES help organizations think differently about the retention, the training reuse, and regulatory obligations that might be required for, some industries?
Um, I think when you think it kind of like reframe, as I stated, how we think about ongoing risks. And it's not just a one-time decision. It's you think about retention policies and different things like that, and we kind of pull those questions, the results from those questions into that retention policy, so we can make sure we have a direct tie into the component, and then the training from there, you do train from what you've actually pulled within your organization. Like we're a big Microsoft shop, so we might say, hey, you can't use ChatGPT, but you can use this particular tool set or Gemini. And then we actually put those trainings in place to show them how to use them with fidelity. So it's the ethical component behind it, making sure you're teaching it.
Right. And trust is always a big component, especially when it comes to security, and which is also, I think, a good thing that the final pillar is anchored with trust in the acronym. So, what does trust mean when it comes to AI security and context behind just trusting the model vendor?
Trust is not blind faith in the vendor. Right? So I think it's understanding where the model actually came from, how the model behaves, and where it might be going, right? And being able to take the time to understand that too said. You have some vendors can sell water so well, and they can sit there and make it sound really, really good, and then we don't do our due diligence, right? I think we always have to be able to kind of stay on top on our tippy toes and be like, I trust you, but I don't trust this product because I don't know it. so so we have to kind of go there. But I do see a lot of people. They always say like I buy from people I trust, but people you trust can screw you over too, right? Because they might
Absolutely.
be something about that tool that they were unaware of. So I think just doing your due diligence and not trusting blindly in the vendor, it gets you there.
Great. So, how can supply chain, as you mentioned, is a big risk there.
Oh,
And some companies may have a more mature third party due diligence program, and others, like we talked earlier, like a small mom and pop shop or just a small IT, might not have that capability. So, how does test address supply chain risk, that model provenance, and just over reliance on AI and recommendations, and help those small groups especially build a third party risk program?
that's a good question. To be honest, trust actually forces you to look beyond the model, start looking at the dependencies, the updates, the data sources, right? Everything that's actually coming into that particular model when you start asking these new dang questions. And AI is a part of the ecosystem, right? So I think being able to understand the complete ecosystem, that is what touch can do for the organizations. It because as I stated, AI has outpaced governance, right? And we all we talk about is governance, governance, governance. But what do you do when a two set has overlooked your governance? So you have to
Mm.
figure out how you pull it back in to make it a part of it from an association factor. And I think that's where touch is really, really beneficial to a lot of organizations because a lot of them just don't know what to do at this point.
Yeah. And, when you're looking at that third party side of things, you're hoping to improve on innovation. And in a previous episode, I talked with a guest about vibe coding and, how that's helping speed things up and
Yeah.
everything. But, it's all about innovation and how quickly we can get to market, or how quickly we can get answers to the business. So, how does tests help that challenge with AI security? keep it from not slowing innovation, but enable teams to be faster while still managing that risk.
You know what I believe? First of all, I'm not messing with any software that's not ISO compliant, to be honest, right? Even SOC 2 compliance is easy to achieve. And
Yeah.
when you think about it, if it's an AI component that's really, really trustworthy and it's meant to be believed in, it would have took the due diligence and took the extra step to actually go get the ISO compliance because they actually care about your security within your organization as well. If you notice, a lot of people are not doing that. And when people start asking for those different kind of credentials associated to their software, they'll just go on to the next candidate because somebody is going to say yes, right? Somebody is going to say yes. They'll say, you're too mature in your thought process, and they'll go to somebody else, right? So I think this is where we as cybersecurity professionals have to get back to the basics, Mark. So many times we're just looking at the newest, the latest, and the newest shiny gadget, and we was like, I want to flex before my friend do, and I got it within my organization, and then we get hacked, and we're afraid to tell our we're afraid to tell somebody we got hacked because we trusted this software when we should be actually colluding at this time so that we can be able to kind of stop it from matriculating through other infrastructure.
Yeah, great. And you hear over and over again security leaders, whether it's on my podcast or the cyber series, the CISO series. You hear it all the time on there and a bunch of others and Security Now about keeping it simple. Stick with the basics and then grow from there, but still keep those basics in check.
Yeah.
And that is so important to do. And it's so easy to get spun up on the latest tech, but yet that's just adding complexity, and complexity is anti-secure at a certain point, right? So security from obscurity is not as good thing to do either. So
It's not. And I just keep saying, who's going to protect the protector though?
that's
Because
right.
it's just like we have always been taught that not one person should be the god of an infrastructure. Yet
Yeah.
we trust these two sets in the same manner, and I don't understand the ideology.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And the I think the challenge too is, you know, there's just so much out there, and and to try to find something to manage a particular risk, and everyone wants to be 100% off of there, and maybe 80% is good enough. And because of the likelihood of it, and if you're layering and
Yeah.
zero trust or whatever you want to call it is in place, then maybe you can keep those things simple a little bit better, I think.
I'm with you. You can remove a little uncertainty, right? Just a little.
That's right. And, it looks good to the executives because now you're better managing the budget. You're being a better steward of the budget versus keep asking and growing, but yet seeing some diminishing returns and stuff too. So,
Yeah. You know what I
yeah,
would like to see? I think a lot of organizations would be really effective if they can take tests and they can embed it in their vendor reviews or the architectural decisions, right? And it can
mhm,
be able to kind of start you because sometimes, like you said, I may have come into an infrastructure that I did not build. And how many times have you went in blind because they don't have actual schematics to be, or they have old code and no one knows that the code is lying in the database somewhere, and I think you don't realize all the doors that you have in your house sometimes, and so you have to do all of your work. Yeah. So, but if you start to kind of think about these things, it'll make us start to look at our data differently and our open door sources to be able to close them the correct way.
yeah, definitely. So, how can security leaders introduce test framework into an existing risk or vendor or architectural review process?
It's not extra work. It's just ask some better questions. Put it inside of those vendor reviews and just ask better questions, right? We actually have a sheet I'm going to share it with you, Mark, so you can be able to kind of allow, so that your teams can be able to download it, right? It should be at the base of this actual interview. You interview and it'd be at the bottom, but you guys can download it, and it can be something you
Yeah.
actually put within your own code reviews, and I'll show you what we're doing. And that's all. I always say, knowledge is power. I can just show you what I know.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And we'll definitely have attached to this or in the comments, where you can download the test framework and get a better understanding of it and where to go to and that sort of things. And speaking of that, it was mentioned in the AI Cyber magazine about the framework. So why do you think this conversation is especially timely right now?
Because AI has outpaced government, right? We are at a moment where trust will actually determine scale. And the truth of the matter is, like I said, you have some organizations that are very aggressive. They call themselves innovative. They're at the front. I'm innovative, and I still am not grabbing AI left and right without having my actual individuals in my company actually understand the associated ethical risks or how to use it ethically. Right?
Mhm,
Nobody's really vested in teaching us how to use it with fidelity. We just
mhm,
figured out how to use it. And how many boards are pulling you in saying, hey, we need to get AI in because they don't understand the associated risks either, right? So I
right.
think this is why is at this conversation because this is why it matters right now because a lot of people in 2026 are being forced to use AI whether they want to or not.
Great. So here's the money question for you
Uh-oh.
here, Terry. All right. If there's one thing about tests that people should walk away from on this and about securing AI, how give it to me here. How can tests do that? Give me that one big snapshot right there.
We don't just open our doors. Um, we don't just open our doors. Wait, hold on. You don't put a new lock on your door without testing the key. Just test it, right? So,
Yeah,
and I think that's what test is having us test our own questions so we can think about this more holistically. I think we have been using some of the same questions for a very long time and is actually kind of made it shut us off on some of the things that we should be actually asking.
great. So, one thing I want to talk about too is you've developed a training program for kids. And I think I can't have you on there without taking a moment to talk about this amazing program that you've done that is already, starting to take hold in a lot of schools. And I think you said you've sold over
Oh,
45,000 copies of it
yeah.
now, which is just amazing. Please tell us about this because, one thing is we got to get that education out to the younger people because they're living in the technology day by day and day. So, tell us about this program that you developed. It's amazing.
Awesome. To be honest, I did not plan this. I have been working on my memoir for a very long time and I have not come out with it. Um, I actually was in the hospital, Mark, having surgery, and I didn't know if I was going to make it. And I told my wife to go get my laptop, and I wrote this book. It be by the time I actually released it while I was in the hospital. That's how long I was in the hospital. And next thing I know, I didn't really do adequate promotion to it. I dropped it on my socials, but the book is now sold at Barnes and Nobles, Walmart. But it's the first children's book to teach ethics and AI, cybersecurity with a digital citizenship curriculum to it. And I was just thinking about meeting kids where they are now, where I desire them to be. And I kept saying, "Hey, somebody needs to teach the kids how to use this. They don't know what a deep fake is. They don't know what data they should be putting in these actual systems." And that's what actually birthed the book. And now the book has sold over 45,000 copies. I travel a lot speaking about it. It's actually in 10 different schools. Um, and the schools are in Atlanta, Chicago area. Well, it's a suburb in Chicago. It's in Chicago called Libraries. And I don't know how none of it happened, right? Like it just happened overnight. And I'm just, just asking my higher source to be able to use me in the way he needs to. I am not making any residual from the actual book. Instead, I'm taking the funds and putting it inside of a scholarship fund. As you know, educational institutions have been impacted with some of the recent changes. So my hopes is to be able to give out scholarships from the book at the 1 year of publication, which will be September 1st of 2026.
Wonderful. That's just amazing. And I think that would be a good way to probably get some more corporate sponsors and stuff off of there. And, those are little school districts that you're talking about. So that's
Yeah.
amazing that that's taking place and stuff there. So congratulations off of that.
Thank
That's
you.
that's
Thank you.
awesome. All right. So one thing I do to all my guests is I put them on the hot seat a little bit, and I ask them, some typical industry related questions,
Okay.
so I'm going to do that to you here as well. So, what is something in the security industry that we could be doing better?
Asking the right questions. I think asking the right questions. I think we need to talk to each other more. I think sometimes we're not that open to new people coming into our circles, and it's more that no new friends type of attitude or mentality. When there, you can learn something in every conversation. I think in the security industry, we shun a lot of people out when we should embrace them.
Mhm. Okay. And then, what is something that you're tired of hearing about?
AI. It's just this is a new fad. We have so many fads that come out, and it's become the buzzword, right? Which is why
Mhm.
I actually, when I create the shirts for the kids, I say AI. It's artificial. You are the intelligence. Getting people to understand that it does matter. AI is only birth predicated on the data in which we put in. Let's do our due diligence. Let's validate the data before we put it in, because garbage in, garbage out. So we're only protruding what we don't know on a higher basis if we put it in like it's factual, right? So getting people to understand that they're the core component is one of the main things I'm trying to kind of push out there and get them to start think differently. Think differently. Just think differently and validate your sources.
Wonderful. And then finally, what is the latest trends in either security or privacy that you're actively monitoring?
SecOps. I think no one talks about. We always talk about AI. Nobody has talked about how AI is actually going to harm us in the same manner, right? Some people are going to use it in um, a different way, and it's going to help them, right? So it's going to help outthink our sources. So how do we actually prepare SecOps to be able to fight those fights when they're not they probably can't move as fast as the two set. So but we don't want them to feel like they're obsolete either, right? So being able to kind of build my cybersecurity teams from the SecOps perspective and have my DevOps team still think security minded, which is some of the hardest pieces, right? A lot of them don't
Yeah.
think security, they think deliverable.
Well, wonderful. Well, Terry, thank you very much for being here today as my latest guest on the Cyber Executive Podcast. It was a huge amount of information in a very short time. And again, we will attach links to this so that way people knows where to go get the test framework. And then also, I think we should have some links to how to get your book in order to help educate kids for those that are in the education side of things. So, and even if you're not, it might be a very good thing to have your kids take a look at.
Awesome. I appreciate you, Mark. You know, you've been my silent mentor for I don't know 2 years now. I just told you were my mentor, so I
Well, I appreciate it, and everything that you're doing is also mentoring me. So it's amazing everything. So everyone, thanks for hanging out with us today on the Cyber Executive Podcast. Again, if you like what you've heard, hit the follow button on your favorite podcast app, and don't be shy. Share with your friends. The more, the merrier. Thanks again. Until next time.
bye.